This is the Louie T Network.
Draft Zone. Draft Zone. Draft.
Don't you just love it when a plan comes together? I can see the finish line. Now, I don't know exactly how much further I gotta go, but I can see the finish line, and that's the first time in a long time I've been able to say that. Getting near the end of this process, and it's been a long journey, but I can finally see the finish line. Now it's just a full-out sprint. Give me all you got left. A little bit left in the tank. I need it to get down home stretch, to cross that finish line here on this program. Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on this program. You know what this is. 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. Who's Next format is attached. Be the first to leave a comment at the bottom of this and future videos stating two things: the phrase next and the team you would like to see next up on this program. Now, I will say, of late, and this isn't something that has occurred throughout the entire process, but of late, there have been people that have been first, but have been tripping, have been slipping, giving me teams that have already been done. Their comments are void of the phrase next. So be the first to leave a comment at the bottom, and you can avoid all of the extra stuff, all of the if and then scenarios. However, be persistent as well, because of late, I've seen some erroneous posts and comments at the bottom of this page. And I'm telling you right now, just because you're not first doesn't mean you don't have a chance to sneak in and get your team up next on this program, because a lot of people aren't paying attention to who have already been done, and people aren't paying attention to their posts, and you're getting some posts without the phrase next. Just make sure you're doing your due diligence and posting up the phrase next in the team. You just never know. You just never know. Now look, if you're 3 days late and $1 short, don't post next in the team you want to see next, okay? Trust me, someone's already posted up, and we're either in the process of doing the next team or they're already done. But if you're 30 minutes late, if you're 15 minutes late, hey, just throw it up there. You never know. You never know. So how do we get grades for these players and these teams here on this draft wrap-up series? Simple. We use our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the draft wrap-up series, as we cannot tell how these players will pan out. And we don't want to discount anybody either. So we get a score for each individual player, tally them up together, get an aggregate score for that entire team's draft. Then we apply bonuses when necessary and get an overall grade for that team's draft. Then we move on to the next team in the process, because of you, the viewers, who will be selecting that next team up on this program. Sounds simple enough? That's because it is. And so now we're talking AFC champion Denver Broncos and their 2014 NFL draft. And I tell you, they had quite the offseason. They were a part of the arms race in the AFC. We know about the arms race in the NFC. Well, the arms race in the AFC is just as strong, if not even more vigorous. And the Broncos and the Patriots were going tit for tat this offseason, making big moves back and forth. I think the Denver Broncos might have edged the Patriots in that department. However, they understand what's at stake. They got to push all the chips to the middle of the table. They've got a small window, and it's about a 3-year window of opportunity to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And We all know that window of opportunity lies in the hands of one Peyton Manning. How many seasons does he have left? Does he have 3? I don't know. That may be pushing it. Does he have 2? I think that's very fair and an accurate assumption to make. 2 years sounds about right, but maybe this is his last year. We can't say. All I know is that the Denver Broncos have put themselves in a position to make a run the next 3 years or so because they understand that once John Elway hangs it up, right now, and I can't talk about what will happen to this team in the near future. I can't talk about what will happen to this team 3 years, 4 years down the road. They could draft a can't-miss prospect at the quarterback position next year and be ready to kind of transition away from Peyton Manning in 3 years from now. So I can't say, but right now, as it stands, this team goes directly back to mediocre. They don't collect $200 on their way there. They go right back to mediocrity once Peyton Manning hangs up his cleats. So they got 3 years max to win a championship, and they understand that, and that's why you see the sense of urgency in free agency, going out and getting all of these veterans to come in and try to help them over the hump. Defensively is really where they needed a big jolt. And look, we can talk about the defense all we want, but the offense wasn't that much better in the Super Bowl. So this is a big draft because if you're trying to win, you want to get players that can help you right away. Now, again, you do not want to push all of your chips in the middle of the table and then have it not work out and then realize after it's all said and done that we messed up royally and it's going to impact us for the next 7 years and you just be a really bad franchise. You got to make sure that in the draft, you're not only getting players that can help you now, but you're also getting players that can help you in the future as well. That's what the draft is about, getting guys that can help you now and into the future. And so let's see how the Denver Broncos were able to supplement what they already have on their roster, trying to chase that elusive Lombardi trophy in 2014. Let's take a look at the draft of the AFC champion, Denver Broncos. Nice, compact, concise draft containing 6 picks. Look, you make a draft with only 6 picks, then 3 of those guys need to contribute right away, and the other 3 need to make your roster as well, and those guys need to be someone that can help you either on special teams or down the road. But when you only have 6 picks, I need you to hit on at least 4 of those minimum. I'd like to see you hit on 5 or all 6, but hey, normally that's not always the case, but you'd love to hit on at least 4 of those guys. And so let's see what the Broncos were able to do. We start in the first round, 31st overall selection. Cornerback out of Ohio State, Bradley Roby. This is a guy that has all the intangibles you're looking for, all of the measurables, all of the skill set necessary to be a dynamic corner in this league. The upside on this guy is enormous. And I think that's what sucks a lot of people into the Bradley Roby train, is the fact that this guy is a burner at a 4.39 40. He can run at 5'11". He's a average height for a corner, but he's got length. He's not afraid to come up and tackle. He's aggressive. He will stick his nose in there and he will throw his body around recklessly. I like that. You know how I feel about corners who are willing to mix it up, and he is willing to mix it up. But there are some things that worry me about Bradley Roby, and I want to get to those right away because there's a lot to like here. I mean, I could talk about the speed, I could talk about the length, I could talk about the playmaking ability and getting his hands on the football. I could talk about him being physical in the run game and willing to tackle. I could talk about all of those things, but you already know that. Let's talk about why Bradley Roby wasn't a top 10, a top 15, a top 20 corner. Let's talk about why Bradley Roby wasn't one of the first corners off the board. Let's talk about why Bradley Roby was looked upon as a guy that could potentially slip to the second round and almost did. And it's because I call him, and I call corners like him, ADHD corners, okay? He's got ADHD at the cornerback position. Now, that's not always a bad thing, but it's more bad than good, okay? When you have ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, when you have that, your problem is you don't focus as a corner, okay? And so, as a corner, you have a responsibility, just like everybody else on the field does, On every single play, it changes. Your responsibility might be zone coverage, and you might be playing cover 2. So that means get up in the face of the receiver on this particular snap, jam him at the line of scrimmage, redirect him, try to jam him for as long as you can, and then send him on his way, and you stay in the flats and make sure that nothing is going on in your area. And if there's nothing coming over there, then maybe you can sag off a little bit and play under a route that's coming behind you, but your area is right here about 5 to 7 yards away from the line of scrimmage in the flats. Stay there, do your job. So that might be your coverage. Your responsibility might be man. You might be in man coverage, and wherever that man goes, so do you. And that's what you have to do on that particular play. You might be playing cover 3. And what that means is deeper than the deepest on your side of the field. You've got a third of the field, and you need to stay deeper than the deepest on your side. So that's the coverage. You know what you have to do. You know your responsibility. Do it. Sometimes Bradley Roby doesn't focus, man. He doesn't focus. His eye discipline is terrible. It's terrible. Okay? So there's times when he's watching his man. He gets up, line of scrimmage. All right? Gives me the head bob. So now I know you're ready. I know you're giving me a little bit of swag at the line of scrimmage. You get up in the face of the receiver. And then instead of him focusing in on this receiver and running with him and carrying him and taking him wherever he needs to go, he goes from here on the receiver to the quarterback. And if I'm the coach, I'm like, hey, Bradley, hey, focus, man. Receiver, your man. Stay on your man. And Bradley's like, I got you, coach, I got you. And he's back on the receiver, and then he's back to the quarterback. Bradley, focus. Oh, my fault, coach. Back on the receiver. Then he's back on the quarterback, and he loves looking at the quarterback. He doesn't focus, okay? That's where that ADHD kicks in, because he's at the quarterback. His eyes are at the quarterback, which means you don't know what the hell the receiver's doing. So if that receiver decides he wants to run a go right by you, he's going, and you don't even know what's going on. By the time you realize, oh, man, that guy's 2 steps behind you. Yeah, he's got speed, but you don't want that to happen. And that's what happened against Wisconsin for the entire nation to see. Saturday Night Football showcase on ABC, and he was abused by Jared Abadaris. And to me, Jared Abadaris is one of the most crisp and precise route runners in this draft, and he came and put a show on for everyone against Bradley Roby. And another thing with Bradley Roby attached with his ADHD is the fact that he's, and this is where the hyperactive part of this ADHD kicks in, the H, is he's a grabby guy. When he gets beat, and sometimes he's not even beat, okay? He's hip to hip, step for step, and he's grabbing. He's tugging. He's pushing. He's hugging. And I'm like, man, you're being ultra aggressive. He got away with some of that stuff in that game, and he still got roasted by Jared Abadaris. But I tell you what, in the NFL, I can see this man picking up a ton of flags because he is a grabber. He is a tugger. And he's not one of these subtle guys that'll give you a little tug on the jersey just to make sure you don't get a step on him. He's one of these guys that's molesting. I mean, I'm talking about felonious assault. I'm saying, like, hey, in 25 states, man, you're looking at 2 years minimum for what you're doing right now out there at the cornerback position. So he's got to clean that up, because I'm surprised guys don't lose a jersey with this dude. I mean, if they had those tearaway jerseys that they used to play with in the 80s and early 90s, he would rip the jersey off. I mean, he's really tugging on some jersey, man. So he's got to clean that up. And he's generally in position. There's no need for it. Find the football, man. So my thing with him is, hey, focus on your responsibility. You're too athletic. You're too good of a corner to be as nosy. Look, he's looking to make the big play all the time. Sometimes there's something to be said about just doing your job. Nobody wants a guy that wants to play hero ball all the time, okay? Do your job and do it to the best of your abilities, and we'll be fine. It's when you want to look in the backfield and you want to read the eyes of the quarterback, and you're in man-to-man coverage. Now, if you're in zone, I don't have a problem with you reading the eyes of the quarterback. That's what you want to do in zone coverage. But when you're in man coverage, dude, you got a man in front of you. You have a responsibility in front of you. Take care of that. And then find the football and make a play on it that way. Don't try to make a play on the football via the quarterback's eyes. Don't try to do that. That's how you get beat. And Jared Abadaris beat this man to a pulp. And so that's the tape that has everyone saying there's a lot to work on with this guy. He's got enormous potential, but there's a lot here that has to be fixed if this guy's going to be an elite corner in this league. And that's why he fell all the way to pick 31. But tell you what, the Broncos can clean him up. And he'll be working with some guys that can play the cornerback position. Keep Talib is a really good corner, one of the better ones in this league right now. Chris Harris coming off that injury. He's not going to be able to be running around and working out. So he could get in the ear of this young fella and kind of school him on how to play the cornerback position. So if Bradley Roby can come in and learn the nuances of the cornerback position and become more disciplined and calm down, young fella. Calm down and scale back that ADHD. Tell you what, in the first round, 31st overall selection, cornerback out of Ohio State, Bradley Roby would have been a home run. I'm not so sold on this guy. You know, I like all of the things he brings to the table, but I'm not 100% sold on this guy. I think there's going to be some penalties. I think there's going to be a rough patch with this guy. And if he doesn't learn quickly, I think he could be one of these guys that just never gets it totally at the cornerback position, because there's a lot of things that I don't like. And the first thing is the eye discipline, and the second thing is that he's grabbing for no reason. You know, it's one thing if you're beat, you can't locate the football, and you start grabbing, you panic. There's times where there's no need to panic, and he's grabbing guys, you know, just for the sake of grabbing. That doesn't work in this league. And so I've got questions. To me, he's a triple right now. I got questions. He didn't have all the answers quite yet. I tell you what, there's enormous upside here if they can get everything out of him and get him to learn to keep his hands to himself once he's 15 yards down the field. If they can get him to focus on his responsibility and not play hero ball, Bradley Roby is a home run. But right now, for me, off the tape that I saw, there's a reason why he was 31st overall. There's a reason I'm giving him a triple to start off this draft for the Denver Broncos. You move on to the second round, 56th overall selection, wide receiver out of Indiana, Cody Latimer. This is a guy that gained steam toward the end of the draft process. The closer we got to May 8th, the more and more this guy shot up draft boards. At one point, a week before the draft, we were hearing that this guy could potentially sneak into the later portion of the first round, which to me was asinine because, again, this guy came out of nowhere. And it's not like he had this dynamic combine and even better pro day that just sent all of the scouts and GMs into a tizzy. I mean, the guy had been injured and really hadn't performed that much. You really didn't see what he was able to do. So you kind of were asking yourself, where's all of this coming from? But when you put on the tape, you understand the excitement. He's a height, weight, speed specimen at 6'2", 215. He looks every bit of the part of a 4'4", 40 guy. I'm hearing that he's more of a 4'5" guy. At that height, even if he's a 4'5", guy, he's still a height, weight, speed specimen. I think he looks like he's about a 4'7" on tape. 4'6" type 40 guy. I mean, he's running fast. He's got long legs, long strides, and he's a guy that, to me, is very fluid in his maneuverability when catching a football and contorting his body to come down with the ball. Long arms, is able to pluck the ball out of the air away from his frame. He makes it look very easy out there as a receiver. I like the fluidity with which he catches the football and runs, doesn't break stride when catching the football, doesn't jump unnecessarily for the ball. If he can pluck it away from his frame without leaving the ground, that's all the better. That means you can get into the run after the catch sooner. So there's a lot to like here with Cody Latimer. And at Indiana, you want to say, okay, and you know, I like to do this a lot. And look, I don't care. I stereotype hard, okay? That's what I do. That's my favorite thing to do in college football. And one of my favorite stereotypes is that the Big Ten is slow. It's slow. You got a bunch of big country farm-bred boys out there that's big and physical, but they're not fast. There's not a lot of athletes out there. He's one of those guys that when you see him, you got to ask yourself, are you fast or are you appearing to be fast because you play in the Big Ten? I think he's legit fast, okay? And what I saw on tape was a guy that didn't run a lot of routes. He's not a guy that ran the entire route tree. So he's not a guy that's going to come in as a polished route runner per se. I think the two best routes that he ran, or maybe three, at Indiana was the slant. He ran an out and up, ran that pretty well, and he ran the 9 route. And he was pretty good at what he did. So there is definitely some room for improvement in terms of a route runner. And what better place to be than in Denver with Peyton Manning, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. And he's going to have some guys like Wes Welker to help him learn how to run routes better. And Demaryius Thomas has turned into one of the game's best at the receiver position. So that's another guy to learn from. And Emmanuel Sanders coming over. He's a really good route runner in his own right. So there are guys there already to learn from. You lose Eric Decker and you replace him with a guy just about the same size as Eric Decker with more speed than Eric Decker. So this Denver Broncos team, they're looking to restock and replenish all of the weapons that they had a season ago. And Cody Latimer is a specimen that I believe has the potential to be one of the best receivers in this draft class when it's all said and done. Now, I will say this much. He was a number 1 at Indiana. He's not going to be looked upon as a number 1 in this league, which bodes well for him because when you think about it, he went up against the other team's best most times than not at college. He won't see the best corner a lot of times in the National Football League because Demaryius Thomas will attract so much attention. And this is the thing that I think is going to allow him to flourish and blossom quickly in this league is that he's got so many guys around him that are going to attract attention that he can go out and ball and not have to worry about teams keying in on him. I mean, you got Demaryius Thomas, you got Juice, you got Wes Welker. They just went out and got Emmanuel Sanders. There are weapons galore out in Denver right now. This guy can sneak in through the back door and make plays. And I tell you what, if he is what I think he can be and the Denver Broncos think that he can be, I tell you what, Cody Latimer is going to be a special player for this Denver Broncos football team. In the second round, 56th overall pick, wide receiver out of Indiana, Cody Latimer for me is a triple. There is a lot to like here. Height, weight, speed specimen, plucks the football out of the air. Not going to make you miss after the catch. But I tell you what, the acceleration, I'm hearing some people say that the acceleration and the burst isn't there. I beg to differ. Au contraire, my friend. Au contraire. I see the speed. I see the explosion. There was one catch. I want to say it was against Michigan, I want to say. And again, it's the Big Ten. Take it with a grain of salt. But he caught a pass down the sideline. I want to believe it was, matter of fact, it was a dragger. He was coming across on a dragger, and he just turned it up. And he was going down the sideline, and they shoestringed him right around the 2-yard line, and it ended up being like a 55-yard catch and run. So he's got the explosiveness to catch it and run and go much faster than slow. He just got to learn how to run routes. I think if he learns how to run routes, he can high point the football. He's a jumper. He's a leaper. He's the strongest receiver at the combine. He's the strongest receiver in his draft. 24 reps of 2 1/4. So he's physically built and ready to withstand the punishment of the National Football League. This guy is ready to go. He just got to learn how to run routes. And again, he's not going to be asked to be the feature receiver. You know how some of these guys get drafted early and a lot of the pressure, a lot of the onus, a lot of the responsibility of being the man is thrusted upon them early on in the process. That's not the case for Cody Latimer. They've got weapons. They've got targets. They've got guys that they can get the football to in Denver. He'll just be one of the guys, and that's going to allow him to really hit the ground running in Denver. This is a really good pick for the Denver Broncos. He's got an injury that he's nursing, had some surgery. Once he gets over that, the faster he can get back into camp and get rolling in Denver, the faster he's going to be an impact player for the Denver Broncos. You move on to the third round, 95th overall selection, offensive tackle out of Michigan, Michael Schofield. And Michael Schofield is the right tackle at Michigan. Remember, Michigan also featured another tackle that was drafted early on and ended up being a top 15 pick in Taylor Lewan. And so they had 2 bookend tackles. One comes off the board in the first round. The other comes off the board in the third round to the Broncos. And Schofield, for me, is a guy that he's solid. He can create movement in the run game a bit. He's not a guy that's going to take a guy and move him 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and create gaping holes for the running back. But he does create enough movement in the run game to give you a place to run. There's not a situation where you run and you don't know how to cut off of his block. He gives you enough space to operate. And so he's a guy that is solid at the point of attack. I think he's very stout. 2 things beat him that I saw. And I think there's 2 big deficiencies with him. The first is speed, okay? Speed, elite speed, inside or out beats him to me most times. If you can get to the outside with speed, if you can threaten him, if you can let him taste your speed early in the game, then you got a 2-way go of it for the rest of the game, because now he doesn't know what to do. He's scared of the speed outside, so he's going to open up, which will allow you to go right inside and go by him. He can't recover. He's not fast enough. His feet laterally aren't quick enough to recover. Once he opens up his hips and gets outside, he can't recover and come back inside. So if you can show him that you have elite speed early on, and he tastes that elite speed, almost like a boxer in a fight early on, if you allow a guy to taste your power and they understand, damn, that guy's pretty strong, then they become timid as a boxer. They become very timid, and what they do from that point on is they look not to get knocked out. They're very cautious, and they instead of them going out and being somewhat reckless and looking for a big blow of their own to deliver, they're more cautious and being defensive to make sure that they don't get knocked out. And it's the same way with Schofield. When he sees speed early on in the game, from that point on, his approach is, hey, let me open up my hips as fast as I can and get to the outside to protect against the speed. And now that vacates the inside and gives you a free run at the quarterback if you're able to take advantage of that. But you can't beat this guy with power. I didn't see this guy bull rushed often. He's a guy that wins when you try to use speed. He anchors down, is able to ride you around the quarterback and allow him to have a nice clean pocket to step up in. And so I didn't see power to the outside, power straight up, power to the inside. I didn't see that winning that often against Schofield. It was speed that gave him fits in the passing game, and it was speed in the run game that gave him fits. When Michigan would run away from him, and they would run stretches and zone run blocking, and his job was to try to get to the second level and seal off the backside linebacker or seal off that backside defensive end. He couldn't do it. He's not fast enough to get to that second wave of defenders and get in position to block without getting a penalty. He's the guy that'll try to cut, but he won't get his helmet around to the front of that defender. So you're looking at a cut block. You're looking at a chip from behind, which is a illegal cut block. And so you don't want chop blocks. Those are 15-yarders. Those sting. So you got to watch him when you put him in situations like that. I feel like you got to put this guy in a position to where he's not at a disadvantage. If you are in a power run blocking scheme, then this guy fits what you're trying to do, because you're not asking him to get out of his element, which is running, to the second level, laterally trying to get up the field and get to a guy that's running away from him. He's not fast enough to catch up with guys like that. If you ask him to block the man in front of him, I think he does an adequate job of doing that. And so for me, in Denver, it's somewhat of a good fit because he'll be able to protect your quarterback. And, the Broncos right now and what they're doing love to throw the football, but they also run the football. But I think he'll fit in Denver because he's a guy that will protect the quarterback. Again, elite speed is what gives him trouble. There's elite speed in this division, okay? There is some elite speed, but I think he can handle it enough to the point where you feel safe with him being out there if necessary. Now, you've got tackles. You feel good about your tackle situation if you're the Denver Broncos. You feel good about your offensive line. But you need depth. We saw that last year. Guys were called into duty last year in situations where they hadn't really been counted on before, and guys stepped up. But you want to have as much flexibility along that offensive line as possible and as much depth. And so he's going to provide you with that. Wouldn't surprise me if down the line in 2 years, I'm hearing Michael Schofield is a starter for the Broncos at right tackle. But I think that he's a tackle. I don't necessarily think he's good enough as a guard per se, because you have to be able to contain speed to the inside as a guard, and you got to be able to anchor down. And I think he can anchor well enough to be a guard, but I'm not sure if he's going to have to rely upon that center for help to the inside too often. And I don't know. Maybe he could kick inside the guard too. I think that's a realistic possibility as well. I think he's a guy that could probably play some tackle or some guard for you along that right side of the offensive line. I think he could probably play right tackle or right guard. So maybe he gives you some scheme versatility as well. Some versatility along this offensive line. It can play multiple positions. That'll heighten his chances of getting on the field if he can show that, hey, not only can I play guard, but I can play tackle. I think that might actually help him get on the field a little bit faster in Denver. Whatever the case, he provides depth on an offensive line that was ravaged by injuries a season ago. And so in the third round, 95th overall selection, offensive tackle out of Michigan, Michael Schofield is I'm on the fence about this one. I'm leaning towards a double. I'll give him a triple. The guy, if he's versatile, like I think he might be able to do, and play some right guard, I think because of what he was able to do at Michigan, he was pretty solid at Michigan. No, I'm giving him a double. I'm having triples remorse here. He's getting a double. You know why? I just thought about something. There's a lot of times when he runs down the field and blocks no one. And he's one of these, I hate look around guys. Guys that run out in space and look around for somebody to block. Go find somebody and go fall on them. Okay? If nothing else, go fall on somebody, go run in the way, go do something. Don't run around and just, who do I block? What do I do? Go find somebody, go get in the action, go do something. I didn't see that from him. So he's a double. I'm downgrading him to a double in the third round. Offensive tackle out of Michigan, Michael Schofield. If I can be assured of the versatility, the ability to play guard and tackle, maybe I would upgrade him to a triple. But right now, he's a double for me in the third round. We move on to the fifth round, 156th overall pick. Linebacker out of LSU, Lamin Barrow is the selection. Lamin Barrow for me is one of these guys that I look at him and he looks the part of an LSU linebacker, one of these guys that's lean and fast at about 6'1", 235 pounds or so. He's not a really big guy, so right there you automatically think not a big major player in the run game, not going to be stout at the point of attack. So he's going to have to use his quickness to beat blockers, to get to the gap before that blocker does, knife in the backfield, make things happen. That's normally what I want to see from guys his size, is the ability to read and react quickly, diagnose the play, and use your instincts and your quickness to get into that hole before that pulling guard or that tackle is able to get their hands on you. Beat them to the spot and get into play. And for me, Lamin Barrow doesn't play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. When he comes into play, when I see number 18 getting in on a tackle, it's usually 3 to 5 yards up the field. And that's disappointing. And he led LSU in tackles last year, and I can't recall many of those being behind the line of scrimmage. He's just not a guy that plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage, and it's frustrating to me because, again, if you're that small in terms of size, and you're not going to be able to stand up at the point of attack. Now, I will say he does a really good job of getting off and fighting off blocks. But it's normally 3 to 5 yards down the field, so what good is it? I mean, yeah, I want you to stop a 15-yard run and reduce it to 5. Yeah, if you don't make the tackle, then that might turn into a 17-yard gain if you don't make it at 5. So, yeah, I can respect that. And I'm thankful that you're making that tackle at 5 yards instead of it getting loose for a 22-yard gain. But how about you be a little bit more aggressive? How about you react faster? How about you play on the other side of the line of scrimmage? How about you do that same thing, but 5 yards further up and have it be a tackle for 1 yard gain? How about you have it be a tackle for no gain or a 1 yard loss? So I'd love to see a little bit more of a sense of urgency from him when getting in the play and tackling a ball carrier, because what I saw from him when he wasn't in coverage, and normally that's his calling card. He's a guy that at LSU, they dropped him into coverage a lot. And I'm thinking that's what the Broncos saw in him in the 5th round. They saw a guy that could provide some special teams depth and some value dropping into coverage, because even though you were starting to phase Wesley Woodyard out of your defensive alignment, he still, to me, is one of the better coverage linebackers in the National Football League. He's now a Tennessee Titan. So you've got to replace that. And I thought Danny Trevathan came in and did a magnificent job in pass coverage in his rookie season. However, you still need other guys that you can count on to drop into coverage. It's a passing league. You have teams in your division that will chuck it a bunch. And the Chargers comes to mind. Not so much the Raiders or the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think the Raiders are going to start throwing the football a little bit more too. So we'll see. But again, you got to be able to play the pass as a linebacker in this league. And I think the Broncos know that, and that's what they see Lamin Barrow as, a guy that can drop into coverage and help you in that regard. He's a pretty sure tackler. He's not a guy that's going to miss a lot of tackles. I saw him get guys down on the ground. Again, it was just 5 to 7 yards away from the line of scrimmage. And so that's the only thing that frustrates me with him is, dude, go and make a play sooner. Don't wait. It's almost like he's on his heels. He's waiting, and he's allowing the fight and the attack to be brought to him instead of him being the aggressor and getting up and making something happen a lot sooner. So to me, he's a reactive guy. He's not proactive, and that frustrates me. But in the 5th round, 156th overall selection, linebacker out of LSU, Lamin Barrow, for me, is a double. He's a solid football player, brings a lot to the table. I think he's going to help the Broncos. If not immediately on the defensive side of football, at least he'll give you some special teams depth and be able to help you in that capacity. Don't see it being a situation where he doesn't make this roster. I see him making this team. I just don't see him having that huge of an impact right away, but you never know. At the linebacker position, guys drop like flies, and you got to have people that are able to step in and help you. Lamin Barrow, I think, can help you in a pinch. If you need him this year, he'll be able to come in and help you. And if he can prove early on that, hey, I've got some coverage ability at a 4, I want to say he's a 4.6 40 guy with that type of speed, you might be able to get this guy on the field in passing situations and nickel and dime sets as a linebacker to see if he can help you, cover over the slot or potentially drop in his own coverage and make some plays that way. So we'll see if Lamin Barrow is able to get on the field defensively. I know he'll be able to help you on special teams right away. You move on to the 6th round, 207th overall selection, center out of Boise State, Matthew Paradis. And Paradis, for me, is a guy that was a try-hard guy at Boise State. Got onto the team as a walk-on, came to Boise State as a defensive player, ends up switching over to the offensive side of football as a center, and then gets an opportunity to play. They give him a scholarship. He's a 2-year starter for the final 2 years of his career. And it's funny, man. It's funny how this league is evolving right in front of our face, because I remember when there was a time when centers weren't big. I remember when the center position was one of the smaller positions along the offensive line, where, you didn't want a big center. You didn't want a guy that was too big in front of your quarterback, kind of clouding his vision a bit. You wanted your center to be a shorter guy, one of these plotters, one of these big, husky guys that could snap the ball, have a low center of gravity, so he could be able to have some girth and be able to anchor in the middle of that offensive line to create that clean pocket for your quarterback. Those days are gone, man. I mean, now you got to be 6'4", 6'5" to be a center. I remember when, 6'1", 6 foot centers were the norm. That was the rage in the league. Now, I mean, this guy's considered small, and he's like 6'3" at the center position, about 6'3", 300 pounds, and he's considered small. So this league is evolving. I mean, guys are getting bigger, stronger, faster. We know that, but I mean, it's funny when you actually see it come to fruition in front of your face. When you start to see positions that were once one way involved. And it's funny because I've watched the offensive line evolve. Remember when, a 300-pound offensive lineman was considered huge? Remember the days of the 285, 290, 295-pound offensive lineman? Man, that seems like prehistoric days now. I mean, that was 15 years ago. When guys weren't 300 pounds, across 305 pounds, you're considered light in most instances. If you're not 315 plus, you're a small offensive lineman. So Matthew Paradis gets a bit of a knock for being smaller, and it's funny because he's a 6'3", 300-pound guy, but he's small, and what I saw from him, he's a try-hard guy, so he's going to give you everything he's got and then some. He's an overachiever. and this is evident by him not getting a scholarship right away, and because he made a position change from the defensive line to a center. He's a bit raw, still a lot to learn at the center position. He's smart, is able to make blitz calls and change protections and slide it one way or another to adjust to whatever the defense is doing. But what I see from him is a guy that doesn't get involved in the play as much as I would like him to. If there's nothing for you to do, find something. You know how your parents used to do to you when you were a kid, when they were mad and they gave you chores to do and you finished them and you were just around looking like you had nothing to do? So they would find you something to do. You never wanted to seem like you didn't have enough to do. You know, they get mad and they tell you to go clean the bathroom and wash the dishes and clean up your room. And your room was already basically clean and there weren't that many dishes. And you finish the bathroom and so you're done with everything and you're ready to sit down and play some games. And they're like, no, you know what? I got something else for you to do. Go cut the grass. You know, they just find something for you to do. That's how I feel about Matthew Paradis. Don't just stand there at the center position. Fine. There's nobody coming up the A-gap. There's no one threatening you there. Go help double team and help the guard out. Go make sure nobody's coming around the backside. Don't just stand there like, hey, nobody's coming up this gap. Go find something to do. You know, make sure nothing's happening and there's no action coming your way. But at the same time, have your head on a swivel. Make sure nobody else is getting beat that you can't help. There's always something you can be doing on a play. Whether it's a pass or a run, there's always something that you can be doing. And when I see Matthew Paradis, sometimes he's just standing around with nothing to do. There's always something to do. Another thing that aggravates me with him is that he doesn't finish plays. Okay? I want you to play through the whistle. I want the official to have to let you know, hey, play's over. Let him go. Okay? He's one of these guys that he'll block you and then he'll just let you go. And the play's still going on. And it's not like the guy burst through a hole and he's 15 yards up the field. You know that defensive lineman isn't running 25 yards down the field and catching anybody from behind. So you can let him go. The play will literally be 2 yards away from him. He'll just let the guy go. I'm like, hey, man, look, man, no, that's not how we do things around here. I need you to take that guy and drive him 5 yards out of the play. And if you're not going to do that, that's fine. Not everybody is strong enough to take a guy and move him against his will. How about you just stay engaged until the whistle blows? That's satisfactory enough for me. Don't just let the guy go. And so sometimes Matthew Paradis will show you a mean streak. He'll drive a guy into the ground and pancake him, pour a little bit of syrup on top. Then there's other times where he's just almost lollygagging. And I don't want to say he's lollygagging because I know that's not his intent. But don't let the guy go before the play's over and let him get into the tackle. Your guy's driving his legs. 2 guys are standing him up. He's still powering forward. Then you get the tackle that comes out of nowhere. He's pushing the power forward. You let your guy go. He runs into the play and pushes everybody backwards 2 yards and everybody falls down. How about you stay engaged and don't allow that to happen? So in the 6th round, 207th overall selection, Matthew Paradis, center out of Boise State for me. He's a try-hard guy. He's pretty raw. Not a big guy. It's crazy to say that at 6'3", 300 pounds, but not a big guy. We know the Broncos had some trouble at center last year because of all the injuries and have had trouble over the last couple of years. And so they could use help at the center position. I don't know if he's exactly the answer you're looking for or not. I'm not sold. To me, he's a single in the 6th round. A lot of work to be done there. I think you don't coach up mean streaks. Either you're a mean guy, you're going to finish off plays or not. I don't see that with him, but, I mean, it is what it is. We'll see if he can find a way onto this roster and help this Denver Broncos team out. And we move on to the 7th round, final pick in this draft, 242nd overall, linebacker out of Oklahoma, Corey Nelson. And anytime you hear about a guy coming from a big school that was a starter, you wonder why he's going so late in the draft. That's always the first question for me. Okay, you were a starter at Oklahoma. That's a big program, well known. Why are you in the 7th round? That must mean there's some type of major deficiency, if not multiple deficiencies. In the case of Corey Nelson, I had to look no further than a torn pectoral muscle early in the season. He only played in 5 games, missed the rest of the season. So by virtue of that, you know it's the Janet Jackson League. What have you done for me lately? Doom, 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 doom. Ooh, yeah. What have you done for me lately? Nothing? I don't get to see you run. I don't get to see you weightlift. I don't get to see what you bring to the table in person. And I can't draft you. I can't divulge a draft pick to what I can't see, what's not tangible for me. And so a lot of people just took him off their board. And it's not like this guy was a physical specimen to begin with. We're talking about a 6 foot, 230-pound linebacker, outside linebacker. He is a guy that if you're going to play him on the field, it's going to be because he's checking the other team's tight end. Not because he's stout in the run game, not because he's knocking anybody's socks off or blasting a running back out of the backfield. I didn't see any explosiveness out of this guy. I just saw a guy that could run and mirror tight ends across the field. And they would occasionally blitz him and he would rush, but it wasn't anything impressive. Wasn't anything dynamic. He just looked like another guy out there trying to get to the quarterback. And some of his attempts were feeble, in my opinion. So this is a guy that I think if he's going to make this Denver Broncos roster, it's going to be off of special teams and special teams alone early on in this process. And if he gets bigger and he's able to prove that he has some ability as a linebacker, then he'll have to prove that down the road. But initially, if he's going to make this Denver Broncos roster, it's going to have to be because he proved himself on special teams. Honestly speaking, you're coming off of a pec injury. Nobody's really seen you. You weren't that big of a producer at college. You were a senior. I'm just telling you, there's not a lot here that impressed me with Corey Nelson, 7th round, 242nd pick linebacker out of Oklahoma. He is a single for me. I watched the Notre Dame game. He had a pick that fell right in his lap, picked it off, took it to the house. Didn't do much else of note. To me, he's not a guy that stands out. He's just another guy on your defense. And if you're the Broncos, you're looking for this guy to come in and flash some special teams ability, and maybe over time he can grow into being a linebacker for you if he, in fact, even makes your roster. So that's the Denver Broncos draft in a nutshell. There are no home runs in this draft. Wasn't that strong of a draft to me by the Denver Broncos. It was a solid draft. Again, let's tally it up, though. You look at Bradley Roby, I think that he's got home run potential. He's got some deficiencies. He's got ADHD, so he's got to pay attention, do his job and his job alone, and not pay attention to 6 different things on the field, including the quarterback. His eye discipline is terrible. If he can learn how to focus in on his responsibility and stop being grabby 15, 20 yards down the field. This guy's got home run potential. He's got speed. He's got length. He's got the ability to make plays on the football. He's tough. He'll come in, stick his nose in the run game. Everything's there. He's just got a couple of things that worry me. He's a triple. Cody Latimer, height, weight, speed specimen, 6'2", 215. Think he's a sub 4.5 40 guy. He can run. He can catch. Doesn't have the ability to run the total route tree right now, so he's going to have to refine his route running ability. But if he does that, I think he's got home run potential again. This Denver Broncos team is loaded at receiver with options for Peyton Manning to get the football to. And so he's not going to have to come in and be the guy. He can just be one of the guys, and that's going to allow him to flourish. He's a triple, home run potential there as well. You go on to Michael Schofield, tackle out of Michigan. I think there's some versatility here. Guard, tackle potentially. He's a guy that can be beat by speed, isn't as athletic as you would like. So there are some deficiencies there. Think he anchors well enough. Think he does a lot of things very solidly. Think he's a guy that can help you, provides depth along this offensive line. And so he's a double for me. Lamin Barrow, think he's strictly a guy you want in coverage. Can get off of blocks, can shed and get to the ball carrier. He just doesn't do it on the other side of the line of scrimmage. He's a guy that allows the fight and the action to be taken to him instead of him being proactive. He's a reactive linebacker. He's a double out of LSU. Matthew Paradis is a single for me, a center that converted from defensive line. He's raw. He's a guy that needs to develop some sort of mean streak, at least block guys until the whistle is being blown. Sometimes he's looking around for something to do. Find something to do. He's a single. And Corey Nelson, coming off of a pec injury, senior linebacker out of Oklahoma, 6 feet, 230 pounds, doesn't offer a lot to me in way of helping you in the run game. To me, isn't that explosive as a linebacker covering tight ends. And I just don't see a lot of value here. If he's going to make this team, it's going to be on special teams. He's a single. You tally it up, triple, triple, double, double. That's 10, double, or excuse me, single, single. That's 12. And there are no bonuses here. So 6 divided by 12, you barely got a double. If you're the Denver Broncos, that is a 2.0 on the dot. You barely, and I mean barely, made it to a double. It's an okay draft. I think where you made your biggest impact moving into the next season is in free agency. That's where you spent the majority of your attention and your time this offseason, was bringing in veterans, because, again, you're in win now mode. These guys, some of them are going to help you right away, but they're not going to be the difference between you winning a championship and you finishing second like you did a season ago. The difference between you winning this year and next year is you bringing in free agents. Veterans that understand how to play this game at a high level that can get you over the hump. And so this draft, while it wasn't that impressive, it's a solid haul. Roby down the road, Latimer down the road, and Schofield and maybe even Barrow down the road might all be big players for you in 3 seasons. Right now, I don't think you're going to be relying on any one of these guys to come in and help you win right away. Now, Roby, because of your cornerback position and some of the sketchiness that was out there last year, especially after Chris Harris went down late in the season, you may need Bradley Roby to step in a lot sooner than maybe you're comfortable with. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes in the National Football League. But all the rest of these guys, they're going to be allowed to come along and learn at their own pace. And when they're ready, they'll tell you they're ready. You'll put them in the game, and they'll probably produce for you in that order. So it's a double for the Denver Broncos in the 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me. One question remains. Who's next?
Draft Zone.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.